think going to the next mystery of cases, I think I invite our dynamic scientific committee member, Dr. Balla, to introduce one of the dynamic young surgeon from Coimbatore, none other than Dr. Anant Doddaramegowda. Over to you, Balla.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Is my slide visible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's my pleasure and privilege to invite Dr. Anant D, who is a senior phaco-refractive surgeon and assistant medical director at Lotus Eye Hospital and Institute, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. He has a lot of experience of 14 years post PG and has done about 26,000 corneal-based refractive procedures, a lot of topical phaco procedures, and he has received many recognitions like Young Ophthalmologist Award, CME Award at Vienna, and many other prestigious awards. Over to you, Dr. Anant D, for your talk. It's all yours.
Thank you, sir. Start sharing my screen. One more. So good evening, everyone. Hope the screen is visible. So
Yeah.
Sarve Jano, let us all stay safe during this time. And no financial disclosures. I'm just a high volume phaco-refractive surgeon. So I, even in spite of doing very high number of surface ablations, I do not have much of haze in my patients where I have subject those patients for the retreatments. So that's why today in this mystery, I will just unlock and try to give some information how I have handled my patient in reducing the haze rather than how I have managed one or two cases. So over the next few minutes, I will try to explain you the pathophysiology, how I went and prevented the haze and how to identify the haze and how to manage if at all if it's happened, but it's better to prevent the haze in these patients. Haze is nothing but an unwanted adverse effect which typically happens after the surface ablation, and this is usually subepithelial in nature, whereas in C-threat happens in stromal. This is subepithelial, and it is typically happens in a predisposed patient because of the exaggerated inflammatory response. The incidence varies from center to center. In my experience, I feel it is between 1 to 2%. And with the age, I think the use of mitomycin, the incidence of haze has literally come down to even less than 1%. And here I should say special thanks to Rohit sir for doing extensive work to identify the novel predictive factors which in a predisposed patients, they have done a good work. What happens is, in a normal, once the epithelium is removed, there is unbalanced level of regulatory factors which contribute to the abnormal fibrotic response, which brings about the excessive myofibroblast formation, leading on to this aberrant collagen deposition and extracellular matrix remodeling. All this happens from the corneal epithelium. So whenever they present in two varieties, transient haze and the late onset haze. Transient haze usually starts very early. They are mild in nature and they resolve over a period of months. But the late onset ones, they are more resistant to treatment and they can even persist also. And whenever they appear, they can reduce the quantitative and qualitative vision. Most of the times they present as undercorrection, myopic regression. If the haze thickness varies from segment to segment, they represent as irregular astigmatism, and on topography, they appear simply erratic. So as I told you that to unlock this mystery of haze, my advice to all the budding refractive surgeons is do not choose a patient more than -6 and subject them for surface ablation, because we have so many other options such as SMILE and ICL that remains the better option. The risk of haze increases whenever we are ablating more than 100 diopters, we are treating a hyperopia more than +2.5 and astigmatism more than -2.5. And whenever the ablative zone is lesser than 5.8, 5.7, the risk of haze increases. And to my notice, and most of majority of the clinicians have also agreed with this, that post surface ablation, whenever the patient goes on a holiday or when he gets exposed to too much of sunlight, the tendency of haze has been increased. So that I have made it in my routine protocol. I advise to all my patients to prevent excessive sunlight exposure for the next 3 months post surface ablation. And one more, what I have noticed why the haze tendency is less in my patients, because whenever I remove the epithelium, either with my epimicrokeratome or with my LASIK 18% alcohol, I make sure that I have a very clear margin of epithelium. I think this factor also might have helped me to reduce my haze tendency in my patients. And these days, majority of the examiners have do smooth profile and a very minimal spot laser, and all lasers are doing good, and the haze tendency doesn't much differ from company to company. The most important role is of mitomycin. So majority of us, we do use 0.02%, but the duration varies from center to center. But in my protocol, over the last 14 years, I use 0.02. If the ablation is less than 70 microns, I expose it for 15 seconds. If the ablation is between 70 to 90, I go with 30 seconds exposure. Between 90 to 110, I go with 1 minute exposure. And as I already mentioned, if the ablation is more than 110, I prefer not to do a surface ablation, preferably go with SMILE or ICL procedures. And long-term fluoromethyl use for 6 to 8 weeks has got a very good anti-inflammatory effect, and that reduces the haze tendency. Vitamin C has been a routine protocol for all my surface ablation patients. I do feel that I do not have any supporting literature telling that, but to my observation, I feel that vitamin C BD for 1 to 2 months has got a significant effect on the reduction of haze. And each and every PGs are aware of this clinical grading of haze and all. And if at all, if the haze happens, that has to be treated surgically. So as I told, I've treated only 2 or 3 cases where I go with superficial debridement with the use of mitomycin for 30 seconds. Some people do recommend PTK, but I do not have any experience of doing PTK for this haze patients. So this is how it appears. It's better to prevent it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anant. I think now I request Dr. Ramamurthy sir and Dr. Gaurav Luthra for a few comments.
Go ahead, Gaurav.
Okay. I actually went off to sleep for some time.
Dr. Anand, can you stop sharing the screen, please?
Yes, sir. Yes.
But I think this subject is close to my heart, and if we can stop sharing the screen, I can't see anybody. Okay, great. So no, I think fantastic talk, and you've really nailed it, because a few of the things that you mentioned about the UV exposure. In fact, my only haze in 2-3 patients, I would have done high volume of PRK for almost 15-18 years now, and the only couple of cases where we got significant haze was similarly with high UV exposure or early withdrawal of topical steroids, and these 2 things have been the crux. But also, I think the management of planning the amount of mitomycin and the steroid regimen, and actually reinforcing the patients each time that they visit for follow-up about the UV glasses, they tend to forget, and some of them actually the compliance with the topical steroids may not be great, and they may continue to use the lubricants and forget one of the other things. So I think meticulous attention to follow-ups and details and discussing and share time with the patient, with the surface patients, I think is critical. And I think the mitomycin protocols, Praveen uses a very, very rigorous protocol. I tend to use a 0.02% for 12 seconds for less than 50 microns, and maybe about 30 seconds for more than that, which is the Majmudar and Randy Epstein protocol, and have been using it for 15-16 years very effectively, and not got haze. Also the few other things with the chill BSS. So I think it's a whole gamut of things. I think a lot of things go into managing PRK patients effectively, and kind of getting good results. But I think you covered almost everything really well. I'll leave it to Dr. Ramamurthy sir for the final comments.
I think very comprehensive presentation, Anant, and well done. I also agree. I don't generally do PRK beyond -6, but of course, hyperopia we hardly ever do. Not much experience of doing PRK for hyperopia. Maybe 2 diopters is a good limit. We routinely use 0.02% mitomycin C for all our cases of PRK for 30 seconds. And it's only for retreatments or wherever we expect a problem that we go on to 1 minute, and it serves us quite well. The only point I might slightly differ is the longer duration of usage of steroid drops. And there have been occasions when the cornea has remained clear, and 6 to 8 weeks after, when the steroid drops are withdrawn, that's the time the haze comes about. So usually we keep these patients on loteprednol for about 3 to 4 months along with lubricant drops. And it seems to work quite well, maybe just twice a day after about 8 weeks, but then keep it on for a long time. And vitamin C supplementation is something that we give. Occasionally, very rarely nowadays, I think it's not just the usage of drugs, it's also the kind of lasers that we had. The PRK got a bad name mainly because it was the earlier version of lasers that was doing it. Now with the flying spot lasers and the kind of laser treatment that's done, maybe the propensity for haze is much less. I feel that as all of us are realizing, PRK is a great tool, and in spite of SMILE and femtolasic, everything becoming available, whenever I'm in doubt and I still have to do a laser vision correction, I tend towards going towards PRK, and it's always with mitomycin C, and it serves us quite well.
Dr.
My one,
Ramamurthy, I had a question. Okay, sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Kudlu. Yeah.
one small question to Dr. Ramamurthy, sir. You've been doing PRK for a quite long period. So we've been starting to put steroids from the very next day of the PRK. Then slowly now the things has been changed. Some people are putting that Acuvel soaked contact lens for a period of 5 days. Once the epithelium heals, then you take out the contact lens, then you put the steroid. What is that your take home message? Whether you have to start steroid on the very next day for 10 days, then taper with the loteprednol?
Oh, first, I just like to correct you. This thing you have been doing for a very long time. Started doing in 1997 LASIK, but for almost the first decade, I used to pride myself with the fact that I don't do PRK. I used to think that it's something substandard to do, but it's only later on with the flying spot lasers, when so many papers coming in, that we started realizing that PRK is a great way to treat refractive errors. And we start steroid. We put a contact lens on the patient, bandage contact lens for 3 days. Starts local steroid drops right from the first post-operative day. The patient is also on topical antibiotics for the first 1 week, and we have not really had a problem with that. I do realize that by the time the contact lens is removed, usually 4 days later, the epithelium is healed up completely. And maybe there is an argument for not using steroids in the first 3 or 4 days, but we have not had any problem with using it right from the first post-op day.
Gaurav,
Dr. Kudlu, yeah, I just wanted to chip in by saying that I use Acuvel for almost a year and a half now, and it's been fantastic. I mean, it's really transformed my PRK practice, because patients first day post-op, sometimes, my PRK, post-PRK patients are as good as the SMILE patients. They hardly have anything. I mean, the LASIK patients may have more discomfort than the PRK patients. And we start topical steroid on the table. We don't even wait for the next day. For 15 years, I've been, using topical steroid starting on day 1, day 0. And the second thing is that the steroid has to be, I think some people use it for 3 months. We have stuck on a 6 weeks protocol of tapering topical steroids, and we found, I had a question for Praveen. Actually, Praveen tends to go beyond the 100 microns ablation depth, which is my cutoff for PRK, because the only 2 or 3 bad cases I had were those which were close to 100 microns, and all the other patients have had. Is the secret that mitomycin for per diopter, kind of 10 seconds per diopter, where you go for what is the highest ablation that you treat, and how do you prevent haze in the very high depth ablations, Praveen, as you tend to go much deeper than anybody else?
I think first up, really the comprehensive presentation by Dr. Ananth, and covering topic about preventing haze very nicely. Two points about what question was discussed earlier as well. Earlier till about 2015, we used to use only topical Nepafenac on the eye along with antibiotics, and then start loteprednol once the epithelium healed. But then again, because of reports of potential corneal melt with NSAIDs on a bare epithelium, we stopped doing that. And so since then, we've been using loteprednol from day 1, like you said, and there has not been any difference in the haze between the 2 groups. We've got about 6,000 cases in either group, and that is actually potential evidence that says that they probably don't play a major role. But for the higher myopes, we've gone up to 140 microns of ablation for PRK. As of now, we've settled around 130. I think we do it pretty routinely, and we have several cases that have had PRK. I think the duration of exposure of mitomycin C probably is the key. So our protocol is about 10 seconds per diopter of correction. And we've been using that. We've got about 11,000 cases so far. And though there have been the occasional haze cases, the number of cases that required intervention for haze in that 11,000 have been only 3, which is really, really low.
And
Thanks.
what
I
is
have a
what is
question
the
for the whole
concentration?
panel.
Praveen, what is the concentration that you have been
Sorry.
using?
0.02%, 0.02 standard.
Yeah, sorry, please, ma'am. Rupal, ma'am.
Yeah, I have a question for the panel, and Dr. Anand, really a good presentation. I also want to know how many people get their patients' vitamin D in serum levels checked before PRK, and whether that gives some indication of whether this person is going to get haze. Also, the method of epithelium removal, does it have an impact on how quickly the reepithelialization occurs and the haze subsequently? So we have found that transepithelial method definitely scores a little better over the other methods in terms of reepithelialization happening quickly. Is that the experience of somebody else, or is it only mine?
I tend to agree with you, Dr. Rupal, in the sense that we routinely do transepithelial PRK. Now it's one stage shot. I mean, the removal of the epithelium as well as the correction of the power. And definitely, as everyone else has expressed, we find even on the first postoperative day, most of these patients are not too much handicapped. They're not complaining too much. They seem to be reasonably comfortable. And I think we all know that the epithelial thickness is somewhat variable. And
Yes.
the fact that you remove a uniform amount of epithelium on the surface of the cornea obviously exposes you to a better surface for the correction of the refractive error. If you're just removing variable amount of by a mechanical debridement, maybe the thickness of the cornea that's left behind is not going to be very regular. But I'm really surprised at this, your experience, Praveen. I mean, because all of us seem to have to do something. It's maybe the Hyderabad weather or something. I mean, in the sense that most of us seem to have a cutoff of -6, but you
It's
want to
Praveen's
look at
magic.
140 microns, and you say that your experience has been uniformly good. I mean, apart
I
from
think-
mitomycin C, is it any other secrets to it?
No, it's also the long-term steroid. I think the lotepred, we are very, very aggressive about ensuring that the patient is using loteprednol about twice a day for close to 6 months
Yeah,
for
I agree
the
with
higher
you.
correction. I think that has been something that we insist at every visit.
No, I think that should be
Praveen,
a
do you
take-home
get the
message.
vitamin D levels also
No.
done?
Vitamin D, I think if you do vitamin D for 100 of us, 90 of us will have deficiency. So I don't think that's a very good measure in determining who will have haze and who won't.
If I can, Dr. Kudla, if I can just add a
Dr.
point.
Rohit Chet's group probably present.
Somshila, please.
Yeah, we do
Yeah,
it for all the patients, ma'am, because there are enough reports and evidences that vitamin D has a role in epithelial healing. It aids in epithelium healing and it reduces the inflammation. And Dr. Anand wonderfully covered that inflammation is linked to post-PRK haze. So we do at vitamin D level for all our patients. A lot of patients walk in with post-PRK haze. We treat them also with vitamin D. Even if I do agree with Praveen sir that 90% of India's population is below the normal range, but then there are enough evidences that it can treat it. So we believe in it.
Somshila.
Right.
So my point is just that, first of all, excellent presentation, Dr. Anand. I think he did cover most of it. And just wanted to vouch that Praveen is not the only one. Our entire group pretty much follows the protocol that he laid out for us. And the few cases that we had delayed haze, they were the ones which had early discontinuation of steroids, if I remember correctly. And so though a couple of them were very high myopes. So I think that in keeping in mind, so you asked what is different about Hyderabad. It seems to be what is different about our population is that the average pachymetry is on the lower side, and we often have to resort to PRK for this reason, and slightly irregular topography sometimes. And the last reason being a lot of them are software professionals, may not afford SMILE, and we want to not do LASIK. And ICL or IPCL are expensive surgeries. So I think that PRK works pretty well in our hands, even for these high myopes.
Dr. Somashila, hello?
Yes, yes.
do you find what is the percentage of problems with mitomycin C in your PRK patients? Do you find any downside to using mitomycin C?
So I think I'll be superstitious and touch wood, knock on wood, that so far we've not had any downside that we can attribute to mitomycin C usage.
Thank
I'm sure
you so
Praveen would
much.
agree.
I have one question for Dr. Praveen, sir. Sir, I have been doing PRK, and recently I've been doing more and more PRK, and after attending Refractive 360, seeing LVP data even more now. So I actually had a problem that I also put loteprednol on the contact lens. We start on the first day, but say around 2 weeks or so, the haze starts coming in, when the epithelium is healed, everything is there. So I have now found that probably that time, if we still continue with loteprednol, it doesn't go away or the patient remains dissatisfied. However, at that point of time, if we stop loteprednol and start Predfort 4-3-2-1 weekly taper, they become subsequently okay by 4 weeks, and then we put them back on loteprednol. Is that your experience, or maybe we are not treating it in the right way?
No, I'll say a couple of things. Interestingly, because we have a wide number of surgeons, we have some variability in protocols as well. So what we've found is that if you use a faster laser, we have a MEL 90 in our network. We have a Allegretto, we have 2 Allegrettos actually. If you use a faster laser, the amount of haze probably is also more, probably because of the fact that the cornea doesn't have enough time to cool down in between the ablation. But this, like you correctly said, tends to peak in the first month. But after that, naturally, it tends to go down. And I would probably say irrespective of the kind of steroids you use, because we have one member of our faculty who uses Predfort hourly immediately after PRK and then switches on to lotepred later on. Well, I've seen a patient who had haze after that as well. So I don't think it is about the intensity of steroid, but I think it's about the duration of persistent steroid use, which probably makes a difference.
Thank you
In
so
fact,
much,
Praveen.
Praveen.
He's right actually, because I use only FML. I don't even use loteprednol, and my incidence is probably the same.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gaurav.